Planning Commission for August 5th is called to order. I can't seem to get online, which is not good because my agenda's
Are you
on.
usually online here?
I
have cell
yes.
signal. I don't even know if it's wireless.
Well, Brooks Public. I thought I was online before.
You can click on it and then hit accept every time.
Oh, okay.
So then maybe like a little action thing.
Accept. All right, so we know the first thing is,
You have to leave the door open.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it open a little though.
what is the first thing?
Announcement.
Are there announcements?
I guess I'll make two announcements, I guess. The first is that the state announced that the municipal planning grants for 2020 are out, and applications are being accepted until, I think, September 30th, October 1st is the deadline. We have the municipal planning grant for the downtown design plan, and I think at this point, I'm not necessarily looking to submit another grant for a planning commission project. The town is considering it, so we have a lot of stormwater issues. So we might look to that to kind of come up with figure out how we want to manage stormwater, so whether it's setting up a stormwater utility, so it might be a study that we do with Public Works or something, so I'm kind of investigating that, unless there's something that the planning commission can think of maybe wanting to pursue with a municipal planning grant. We can talk about it again in September, but you can use it for studies, you can use it for, writing a piece of the town plan, land use regulations. Yes.
Sorry. So in one of the things I went to, we looked at, there's a part of the A&R, like one of the databases where there's, in some cases for some streams, stormwater management plans have been developed. Like I know Crosby Brook has one.
Mm-hmm. They have, yep.
We have the language on.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. They do look at how to better manage stormwater along the Crosby Brook. Actually, it's just, a portion of it, basically just a little south of the roundabout, and then to the north, and they look at areas where maybe they can build some infiltration and stuff like that. I think what we're looking is more of how do we handle it as a town, and whether or not we create a stormwater utility, because the town's responsibilities are increasing with maintenance, with building new structures and that kind of thing.
What does that mean to create a stormwater utility?
Yeah. You can take it.
For instance, all of the residences in town that are hooked up to sewer lines, right, pay for the sewage treatment plant. So that's kind of considered a utility. It doesn't mean everyone in town pays for it, it's only those people that are using that service. So it would be a similar kind of thing. It would include the whole town in this case.
Yeah, so basically,
Probably.
if you are discharging into stormwater pipes, because they still exist, although we're trying to get people to separate from the stormwater pipes and kind of infiltrate, and that's one of the things our land use regulations do, to kind of infiltrate as much as you can on site, because you get better water quality and you reduce the quantity that's running off. So, it's definitely in these commercial and more developed parts of town, they're definitely discharging into stormwater systems. So if you were a user of that system, you're gonna start paying, because the town is increasingly having to maintain and improve that system.
So would that be like a calculation based on the amount of impervious surface on your property?
That's one way it's done,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So essentially an increase in some kind of fees.
Yep.
People will be happy about that.
Yeah.
I have another suggestion, in addition to stormwater, not in place of stormwater. But I wonder if it isn't time to do a new plan for West Brattleboro. Seems like West Brattleboro's plans are kind of outdated. And I should do my homework before I suggest that, so before you think I can look at the plans currently there, but it just seems like there's a lot of like.
Yeah, West Brattleboro's plan was last done in 2008, 2007, 2008. It was kind of a lot of visual preference surveying and.
Yeah, I mean,
it could probably.
It seems like it could use, I mean, maybe not, I mean, I think something like what we're doing
Mhm.
with the community process for the master plan
Mhm.
could serve the community of West Brattleboro quite well. I don't know how many people in West Brattleboro are paying attention to the master plan, but I think we might get more if we were doing something that was focused on,
On West Brattleboro.
yeah, on that section between Chelsea and
Mhm.
the Mama's, whatever Mama says.
Okay, I mean,
Let us know before the next meeting. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to whatever. I don't know, regardless of what the project is, I don't know how competitive Brattleboro will be. Just
Yeah.
because we have one now and we're not through with it. And generally, we don't go in consecutive years. But
Oh, okay.
it's not a real onerous application process, so, it's kind of, I'm willing to submit something. So.
I'm sure the
Yeah,
West
that's
Brattleboro
good.
Association would be more than happy to do some legwork for you on it.
Yeah, so let's think about some more and then we can talk about it in September as to.
When's the deadline?
September 30th, I think. And then just as kind of an FYI, we've been interviewing candidates for the planning technician position that's open in our department. So it's been pretty exciting. So we have a good group of candidates. So I think we have one more interview this week and then maybe we'll have some finalists back.
So like a couple weeks, probably,
Yeah.
2-3 weeks or something.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
before an
this-
announcement, depending on who the candidate is.
And that's like an expansion of Rita's job?
Yeah, so Rita was just clerical. She had GIS skills, so she could, she could do a map and.
What's JS skills?
GIS.
Oh, GIS skills,
Yeah.
okay.
This position is kind of geared to somebody maybe just coming out of college with a planning, geography, or, associated field degree. So hopefully they'll be kind of doing some of the zoning aspects and some of the planning aspects, so you guys will definitely meet the person. Whether they come to every planning commission meeting, I don't know, they'll definitely be helping out with research and so.
Cool.
It's good. I'm excited.
Great.
Can you fill us in on what's been happening with the master plan?
Yes, so right now, we're kind of in that in-between time where on the Better Block Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I have received 2 applications. They're due on the 12th, which is next Monday.
Yeah.
So I had talked with several people who have an interest, so I'm expecting to see some more.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's where we're at with that
Cool.
right now. We have a meeting on the 14th. I know at the time there were a quorum of people who said they could come. So it's Wednesday, the 14th, to pick the winning.
Can everybody but me
People
go?
don't remember.
Oh, what's it? I remember the 12th is our
12th is the
decision.
deadline, the 14th would be the meeting.
Yeah, I can't go on the 14th, likely.
We can move,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with moving the meeting time if we want to do it something during the day, if the evening doesn't work, or we can also do call-in or whatever. If some of you may have said you couldn't come, and so maybe it was.
I think I said I
Jessica.
could, but now I remember that it's my goddaughter's birthday.
I can do the 14th.
You can do the 14th.
Anytime.
I mean, I don't think that this will, I'll get you the applications on the 12th, the close of day, and we'll get together and discuss it. Don't expect it will necessarily be easy, but
Mhm.
Okay,
I will check and make sure that I can get a quorum.
okay.
Okay.
Or did we talk about a subcommittee?
I don't think we did talk about it, subcommittee. I think we talked about well, I think we had talked about getting some kind of list of the tasks that we were gonna be asked to do and then have people sign up for them, and I don't think that that ever happened.
Okay.
So I think the way we left it was as long as we had enough people on each task, then it was gonna be fine.
Sounds right. Okay.
So we're ready for public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the organizational meeting. So we need to elect chair, vice chair, and clerk, review the bylaws, and open meeting law. Nominations for chair.
I nominate Felicity for chair.
Wait a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Do we want any other nominations?
Were those positions filled in previous years?
Yeah, I think I'm vice chair. And
Yeah,
you're clerk?
Kathy's vice
Or-
chair.
I think I'm clerk.
Yeah, so
So I nominate Kathy as vice chair.
can I second it or no? Thompson?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, I mean, I think we're gonna vote the slate, so we might as well
Will I?
nominate the next person as clerk.
I'll nominate Kate as chair.
I'm gonna now, as clerk,
And nominate Tom as
I'm
clerk?
gonna nominate Tom as clerk.
Oh, I deny.
You do not.
You don't have to respectfully
You don't have to do
You don't have to
anything.
I know, but.
It's the easiest job.
You declined?
Yeah, I do deny.
That's them.
I'll
Alright,
accept.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, is there a
So
second?
I'll
Okay,
second.
okay.
No, I nominate
can't
her, so
second.
Tom
I'll
has to
second.
second.
Okay, so
Okay, second.
is everybody okay moving the slate?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All
Yes,
right.
Madam Chair.
All those in favor of the slate as identified?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Unanimous.
Anyone opposed? Everybody abstaining? No. Okay. Congratulations.
Congratulations, all.
Did everybody get a chance to run through the bylaws?
You probably didn't because
I
I
sprinted
just,
through them.
I just put them on the drive today. I was like, ooh, they're
I
right
did.
there.
I looked at
Let's
them.
just have a minute to peruse these.
Yeah, I actually had one question. It was on number 6, capital budget. Prepare and present to the select board a recommended annual capital budget and future capital program for a period of not less than 5 years as set forth in 24 VSA
under
section
section
4.4.
Section 4.
Or numbers.
Yeah, section 4, number 6, powers and duties.
Okay.
Well, there is a capital budget that kind of gets dealt with by like you and Peter, right? I mean, there is a capital budget
There is
that
a-
are presented to the,
Are we required by law to have some
All
no's
these
in
things are
that?
things that we
No.
may do.
Yeah, it's,
Oh,
their
okay.
statutory responsibilities, they're the planning commission is enabled to do.
Okay.
Brattleboro's capital budgeting project, our process doesn't include the planning commission. I was involved in New Hampshire where it was within the planning
Mm.
board's purview, and it was a very, very different process than what this town uses, and my understanding of how most Vermont towns do it, so it's enabled, it's just.
Okay.
yeah, it says the commission may, under that title, 24
Yeah.
VSA. So, since it's taken care of by town staff, it seems like,
We're okay with that.
yeah.
Okay, does anybody else want to go through? That was the only thing I had.
Just another moment to review.
Take your time.
Did we not do our annual meeting? It's supposed to be in the first
July.
month of
The
July.
reason we didn't is that the select board hadn't made appointments yet, so we had to wait.
Yeah. We waited,
Oh, so we did, we
We just
deferred it,
yeah.
okay.
So now Jessica presumably is a
She is
full-fledged
appointed,
member?
yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Is quorum defined somewhere?
Yes.
A majority.
A
Section
majority of the
nine,
voting.
yeah. Of the
Oh,
actual-
okay,
yeah.
okay, I was looking right at it and not. Might have been the meeting I just had at the People's Point.
And did you put open meeting law in there?
Where?
Into the drive?
Section 8. Oh, the drive.
Because we're supposed to review open meeting law too.
I did not put any materials in, I can, after the fact.
But does open meeting law, do we, I don't know, it's a fairly large law, right?
It is, I just go over a couple salient points
Okay.
as it pertains to the planning commission.
Okay.
I can stick these materials in.
Can I, is this conflict of interest policy taken out of the town? What's our ruling document for the town?
The charter?
Is it taken?
Don't believe so.
It's very similar to the language in the town charter, which
Is
I
it?
worked on with Bob, because I
Is
was.
it may
Yeah.
be, it's been around for a while,
Yeah, good. I'm good with it.
so it's possible for a while.
One thing to think about, I don't have it memorized, but I remember with reading the Wyndham Regional Commission definition of planning, of conflict of interest, it addresses it in a sort of way of like, if the potential financial or maybe other interest is no more or greater or different than what a regular person outside the commission of that population or neighborhood or demographic would benefit, then it's not a conflict of interest for that commissioner. Like if you're advocating for something for your town, and it's gonna, if I am, and it's gonna result in my property tax being decreased by half, but if that affects everyone in the town the same, then it's not a
Yeah.
conflict of interest for me to vote on it. But if it only really benefits me, or like my family, you know, or like a little subset maybe. I don't know about subset, but if I'm part of a larger group that I'm representing, you could say it's a conflict of interest because it benefits me, but not if I'm part of a larger group.
But ours doesn't say that, but the
Exactly.
WRC
Yeah.
says it, huh?
The
Well,
WRC's does.
We don't need to take any action on this if we're not changing it. We can always bring up the bylaws at any point, so I can bring in the WRC's conflict of interest and see if you like that better, and then I'd probably run it by the town.
I thought it was interesting, I mean, it clarified, because every action we take, if you want to get really detailed down to it, it does kind of affect you somehow,
Right.
you know? So it's like, that brought some reality to the
Yeah, that's
definition.
true,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
All right. Well, let's
And
look at
there's
it.
a regulations for how we change the bylaws, so, yeah, we can do that.
Where is this located? Is this on the website?
It's on the Google Drive now,
Oh, I know,
but no, it doesn't live on the town
Right.
website, it's just in our department files.
If I had seen all this before I joined, maybe I wouldn't have.
Would have joined.
No, it's fine. It all looks good.
Most of the committees, I think all of them have bylaws at this point. At one point, they didn't.
Okay.
So, open meeting law, you're gonna tell us about that?
Yeah, so open meeting law, just a couple of things. I mean, you have staff, so we take care of most of it. So agendas have to be posted 48 hours in advance. There is such thing as an emergency meeting where you wouldn't need an agenda, but I think it would be a very unusual circumstance for the planning commission to need an emergency meeting. But anyway, if it ever happens, you know, we can do it. Similarly, minutes have to be posted within 5 calendar days, but we take care of the minutes and we get them posted on the town website. So if you go to the planning commission's page, the draft minutes are up within 5 calendar days. We've talked a little bit about this, or had some back and forth over the course of the year. But basically, so a quorum of the planning commission is 4. We can't take action if there's not 4 members here. And anything that would have to be 4-0, so it's a majority. You can all be in the same room at the same time, 4 or more of you can. So if you all show up at a select board meeting, that's fine, that can happen. You can be in a social situation together, that's okay.
Good.
But you're not supposed to discuss specific business of the public body that is expected to come up later, so. You shouldn't, if on the 12th I give you the applications for the Better Block Challenge and on the 13th you're all party together, you shouldn't be discussing it, because on the 14th we're going to be acting on it, right? So, so that's that. You cannot vote by proxy, but you can participate in a meeting by phone or Skype and vote that way. And if somebody is on the phone, on a phone call, calling into a meeting, we have to do roll call votes. So that happened a lot at the Women Regional Commission again. And then new agenda items. So it says, this was a bit new for me. So
Are there changes to the open meeting law?
No.
Okay, so we're just
no,
going
we
over it
just
as
go
a
over
refresher.
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, there were changes about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Clarified some of it. You're not really supposed to take up agenda items that are not on the agenda. You can add something at the beginning of the meeting, but it's really advised against unless there's something critical that is time sensitive, so otherwise it should wait till the next meeting. So. But once the agenda's been posted. But sometimes we post agendas, usually we try to do it 6 days out, so if something came up, you get the agenda and you're like, I don't see this on there, you could always get back to me and I can amend
Still
the
be
agenda.
48 hours before.
Yeah, I can amend it. So those are kind of key open meeting as it pertains to how we run the planning commission. If you're interested in more, I can put more on the drive.
I'd be interested in seeing it up there on the drive. I think it's always useful.
Okay.
Okie dokie. So approval of the minutes from July 1. You already read them, Tom?
Yeah, me too.
I like it too. I wish I didn't have to say things in 2 places though. I like it so much.
Mm.
Everybody good with these?
I am just curious about the term physical sustainability. What does that mean?
Where is
Where is
that?
Where is that?
It's,
Physical.
yeah. There we go.
What page you on?
It's
First
on the
page.
first page. Members of the working group
The middle of the biggest
were
paragraph.
okay with that. Town manager will advise that physical environmental sustainability will be a major part of their work,
Mm.
but that there are other measures of sustainability that will be considered.
When we were having this.
Do not know.
Oh,
I've
okay.
never
Is that
have to-
fiscal?
Yeah,
Fiscal?
I don't know.
Fiscal.
Fiscal?
Fiscal.
Yeah.
Probably.
Fiscal.
Physical's
That
not,
makes so
right?
much more
Yeah,
sense.
fiscal, I think it must
Yeah.
be, because, yeah.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, well, maybe he means like the buildings.
Which led me to fiscal. Like I was thinking
Right.
like assets or something,
Right,
so.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it is fiscal.
It makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
I think it's Tom's initials become the trademark.
Oh, yeah.
That's under G, so
Mhm.
it's just a funny thing, it's automatically superscript.
Oh, really?
That's funny.
Trademark.
Trademark.
Oh, yeah, Teams.
It's no big deal. It's like a certified.
That should be
I
my.
actually
my-
see it
my
a
symbol.
couple other
Yes,
ones.
that should be your symbol.
I also see a couple of other formatting type things. So sometimes I use Mr. or Ms. and other times I just use the first initial. That's because I often do different minutes. The Conservation Commission uses
Right.
the initial, Planning Commission has always used a title. I
What?
don't know. Maybe I should just go to use the first initial.
That's crazy making, you should decide what's in the minutes.
But I might change that up just so it's consistent because it bothers me.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter to me,
Yeah.
so.
It's probably easier to use the initial.
I think I'm gonna just move to the initial
Yeah.
because I've never really liked the Ms. Mr.
Yeah, and as
And
we
then-
move into our more
Exactly.
progressive
That's right.
future, that should probably fall away.
Right, indeed. So, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Second, oh, or Tom beat me to it.
A motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Right.
So you good?
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor?
Tom second.
My second.
And all in favor? Aye. The minutes are passed, and now we are on to sustainability, yes?
You took a lot of notes, Felicity.
Yes, well, so a little.
Lost our quorum, no.
Oh, we lost our quorum, should we have
No,
to,
it's
we
okay.
take a
We're
minute?
We're not making any decisions.
Okay, we're not making any decisions. So I'll just explain why I did that. In paying attention to the conversations after the select board meeting where the
Yes.
sustainability position was discussed and then a vote was postponed because there were only 4 people there and they were split in 2. There was a lot of discussion in that meeting and post that meeting about the town plan as being really chock full of sustainability initiatives and that the town was doing quite well. So I thought it was worth actually checking on that to see how we were doing. So I read through the whole town plan, and there are some things where I thought those could variably maybe be under sustainability, but I think I got pretty much most of the things. And then I sent it on to Sue to sort of check in on where we were and what the status of these things were. And it struck me mainly because the conversation, now the select board is meeting again on August 20th, and they're going to have another conversation about whether or not they want a coordinator. And I think, and it's just me thinking this, regardless of how it goes on the vote, it does seem to me that all of this conversation around whether or not the plan is strongly advocating sustainability and whether or not it's evidence of sustainability action taking place in the town. It's not, I don't think it's readily clear to the public. I don't think a public person would be able to see how sustainable we are and to be able to take pride in Brattleboro sustainability if they just read the plan. So it just seems to me that there's work to be done there regardless of the vote. And in addition to that, the other piece of the conversation which I thought the Planning Commission should participate in is this notion of how much of the sustainability is on the shoulders of the volunteer community. So members of the Planning Commission, members of the Energy Commission, members of the Tree Committee, all of these different initiatives actually come under the purview of a volunteer workforce, essentially. So those two things seemed like, is having sustainability under a volunteer workforce sustainable? And I don't know how we want to talk about it. It seems to me that we can talk about it for a brief period of time, we can talk about it all night long. And then whether or not we want to write something back to the Energy Committee or to the Select Board, or just to ask the Select Board to look at our minutes before they have their meeting on the 20th.
What was the name of the document that was shared that you pulled out is it Sustainability and Brattleboro Responses?
Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, I don't know where my copy of your responses are. I have to go in and find it. Because I just
I
haven't.
put them up on the drive.
Okay, oh, there it is.
They're also.
So how do you want to go about this? Did all of you get a chance to read it? Do you have
No,
questions or
just-
things? that-
sorry.
The thing that struck me is that in fact there's only two cases of benchmarks being articulated in the town plan. And that's reduce greenhouse gases 40% from 1990 levels to by 2030. And the 20 times 25% in state renewables, et cetera, which is on the first page. Which Sue says, in fact, those are state
Those came
goals.
from state, yeah.
And so there isn't anything else, there's no sort of dashboard-like items.
And I think wasn't that the thinking when we talked about it? We talked a lot about sustainability, and climate change and, all these things. And I think, wasn't that part of the thinking was it was hard to set benchmarks when the state was in the process of setting those while we were doing this?
I would say
Because those were gonna potentially supersede anything we said.
Yeah, that's part of it. The other reason, I mean, we looked at, so a town plan to planners is first and foremost kind of a land use document. And so we were looking at sustainability through more so the land use lens, and the actions that we were taking around floodplain management, around, and then the other areas it would hit on, obviously transportation. Energy was benchmarking because that was that work had kind of started out there in the scientific community and, within the state and in other organizations. And we had some data that we could look at. But we didn't, because it's, used as a regulatory document, we were trying to be visionary, but not going out too far, because it gets used in Act 250. So what good does a town plan that says we're gonna conserve, I don't know, X number of acres? That serves no use in an Act 250 setting, or so we were trying to be clear with what our intents were, because you use this document to then justify your land use regulations, and so we weren't trying to have benchmarks for everything. We were trying to have measurable goals, but we weren't thinking benchmarking.
So is the town plan the best document to be using to try to be understanding how sustainable we are and?
Yeah, maybe some people get confused about what the town plan is. I mean, maybe it should be called Act 250 compliance document.
Except statute calls it a town plan.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, maybe you don't need to go that far, but it might be good to clarify that there are limitations to what has been defined in the town plan based on our understanding of what a town plan is. And that, in fact, while there's only these two benchmarks, there could be more. But in the development of the town plan, if we had a sustainability coordinator, they might have helped us think through that. You know what I mean? Like in the development of the, but in the development of the town plan, that was not a consideration. So one of the questions is how do we codify those benchmarks and what are they, right?
Yeah.
Going
Well,
forward.
but I might also argue that that's helpful for somebody to take a look, have us, make some suggestions. We really struggled when the energy coordinator, was giving us these benchmarks. We're like, well, who's gonna track all this? Because, so then you get it falls on the volunteers. Maybe it's not the best document. I mean, I think that needs to be weighed, just because, there are some towns that have climate change plans. State statute is, has really told us what we need to do with town plans. Sure, it can be innovated and we can do different things with it. But we still need to make sure that there's certain language in there to protect the town for Act 250 or to.
Right, and that
It could look different.
Yeah.
It's what we have now, so I think it is the best document to be looking at.
So can the planning commission support the notion that our town plan is sufficient in terms of sustainability initiatives and we don't actually need a coordinator?
I would not say that.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I wouldn't either, but it's because I don't know that the town plan without sustainability stuff in it suggests that we need a sustainability coordinator. I guess what I'm suggesting is we take the town plan out of the conversation, because it seems like if it's been written for another purpose, in fact, what we need is something different. We need a different document.
Or you can qualify
that's-
it. I mean, I feel like the information,
Commission.
Oh,
So
interesting.
there's this document from 2003. I just Googled it and found it a while ago. The Climate Action Plan, 2003, when
Yep.
Spoon was the chairperson, I believe.
So where is that document? And why don't we, why,
Because it's old
Yeah.
and it's, well, some of that I think, I honestly don't know. I've seen the climate action plan. I think that may have been some of the stuff that was involved with ICLEI. I'm not sure. I shouldn't
So,
speak
but
off
you-
the
but
cuff.
you-
I don't know.
You said
But
some
it's
towns have
national.
climate change plans.
They're starting
They're starting
to, so I know, and I'm not sure if it's individual towns or if it's more of regions. So I know that the Regional Planning Commission Upper Valley, Two Rivers Ottaquechee in the Upper Valley area, they were looking at some more sustainability plan. I don't know if that was in addition to their regional plan, so
What about Wyndham Regional?
they do not. They have their regional plan, they don't have,
so would it be possible, going back to the first agenda item, for us to apply to the state for a municipal planning grant that actually was a sustainable planning project?
well, I'm actually going to be taking to the select board. I got approached by this woman that works for, I'm not gonna be able to remember the organization, but anyway, they have funding from the National Science Foundation, and they're working with Virginia Tech to, they're basically going to be working with towns on resiliency and I'll have to find all this stuff. So that, we're kind of looking at that as free technical assistance, separate from the municipal planning grant.
Oh, wow, so that would accomplish this?
Yeah,
Huh.
so the same night that we talked to the sustainability coordinator with the select board, I mean staff, or it's back before their agenda. That's one thing that I'll be taking to them to get their approval. It's kind of like a grant, but there's no funding, but I still want their approval to apply.
and so it's like technical expertise that would be doing. So intriguing.
Yeah.
Back to the town plan, I feel like what has been laid out here, and just to clarify, the red, like, so there's an italicized question.
That's me.
And then there's the red, and is that you
That's my
Yeah.
response.
responding?
Just kind of a
Okay.
brief response about actions going on with the towns, within the town or with the volunteer, not within the town, within the municipality, the big T town.
Yeah,
There's lots of other things going on out in the community that I didn't comment.
Right, and that aren't necessarily in there. I mean, and that, yeah, yes.
so my thought is that this going through the town plan is very useful, and marking it like this, and this is happening and this is not happening, and this is why this is not happening, would be very useful information, I think, for the select board. And I think you could, we could provide this to the select board from the planning commission with like a preamble that also points out or frames the town plan. Like, the town plan is put in place to do this. It does not do this, so that they kind of read it with a framework understanding.
Mhm.
This is not the be-all and end-all for what the answer should be when you're thinking about moving the town towards sustainability. And I think that would help to inform the discussion for their next, meeting, whenever it is. The other thing is that Dan asked Peter, right, didn't he say for this next meeting or whatever, like, can you tell us what the benchmarks are and what we've met, right?
On the energy chapter.
On the energy chapter. So I'm assuming that that will also inform the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on that.
Oh, okay. So I think this will help to provide like a larger, framework.
Mm-hmm.
for possibly the need, and to also illustrate what is actually getting done and what else might be able to get done, depending. And it's interesting that it's sort of synchronized with that free technical service.
Yeah, that's really
Because that
helpful.
could be really informative, right?
So then.
So I don't know if I need to move that as a movement, what's it called? Suggestion? A motion that we prepare this for the select board, or?
I think can't we just recommend that it gets forwarded to the select board? And they can do with it what they want.
Your call, Sue. Do
Yeah.
you want us to be formal about it, or?
I'd like to be clear about what we're recommending, at least formally, just so that's clear.
I think if you want what's clearest, I think a letter, maybe with this attached, that gets distributed.
I'm happy to draft the letter and then have everybody else change it, because I'm good at drafting things, and as long as they're gonna be edited by somebody else, that's fine with me.
I would like to, I can move it along. I would like to kind of stay out of it and let you guys write the letter
Okay,
and edit it,
okay.
and I will certainly, by all means, get it to them.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we voted anonymously, unanimously, to support the definition of the sustainability coordinator. But I think the sort of, the piece that's missing for me in this whole conversation is what else you could do with $100,000. Because if the notion is that there's something else better that can be done with $100,000, I would love to hear that
What is
argument.
it?
What is it? Which was part of why I was going through this, because I thought, well, maybe if there's one sort of glaring thing, that if we could just take a chunk of money and push it forward with this, then that would be great. Move us ahead. Like, say, for example, I mean, if you could get a brand new bike ped system through the entire town for $100,000, I might suggest that that would be a better use of that money, to transform our town into actually a seriously bicycle-friendly, pedestrian-friendly place. But that would take way more than $100,000, I think. Yes. But that's just an off the top of my head suggestion. I mean,
Even if, it'd be an interesting exercise to think of those, if you made all of the electricity that all of the town offices use come from solar, that would cost more than $100,000 too. So it's short of hiring a person, it's hard to understand like how you're actually gonna really effectively use $100,000 in something that would
And
have
actually
a
make a difference.
long-standing,
Yeah, I don't know I don't know, I mean, I think I don't necessarily think we want to get into that, because we have
Yeah,
not yet
I'm not
come out
suggesting
in force to say we suggest that the select board vote in a particular way, right? We've just said that we endorse the energy committee's work.
So I think what we're suggesting doing is that Felicity is going to draft a letter that clarifies what's in the town plan and what the intent and purpose of that is. What I think, another thing that is popping out of me here is there are a whole bunch of things here where it's like a different committee or a different board could be moving on this thing. And I was wondering if separately, maybe there's some way to like sort of also move those things along. I think that also that gets into what we were talking about earlier with, how sustainable is having volunteer people, right? Because it's a bunch of these things, it's like, well, the tree committee could be doing this. It's like, well, how much time do they have? They probably already got a full slate of priorities.
Felicity and I talked a little bit about this beforehand, and one of the people who was actually behind the initial conversation last year to hire a sustainability coordinator had sent an email to several of us with this suggestion of kind of doing a survey to the different boards and committees and commissions and finding out, have they done anything with this? Was it on their radar? He basically took the matrix at the end and added a couple of other check boxes. I thought that separate from the conversation of a sustainability coordinator, and that's clearly not something that could be done by the next time it's gonna be discussed with the select board. But I thought it was a really good idea, because the volunteers are always turning over, and, you know, they might not be aware of actually what's in the town plan. They might not even know what the town plan is. So maybe annually, it's a letter from the planning commission saying, here's the town plan, here's things that relate to you, you know, and it can be, you know, it can lay out what they are and then gauge their interest of whether or not they're gonna be working on it. Is it something they're willing to take up? So I thought that that was a really good idea, and separate from anything that happens with a sustainability coordinator.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You know, maybe with the annual open meeting training and stuff, they get this
Yeah,
letter
yeah.
from the planning commission that's like,
By the way,
Here are the things
yeah,
this is
here's
what
the
currently
town plan
exists.
says that is important to the town.
Yeah.
Keep it on your radar, let us know. Have you done some of this? Are you intending to do any of it? Are you, no way?
I think that's a good suggestion.
So then that would be something that we would have to prepare, i.e. you would have to prepare.
But, you know, if we want the town plan to be implemented, I think it's a good thing to do. I mean, again, it gets to the question of the volunteers and working on them, but.
Well, but it also, it's a different way to meet, I think what the, I think one of the needs Felicity was looking at when she started this exercise, which is, you know, how are we measuring up to the things we said we were going to do? So if we're not, if it's hard to set benchmarks and try to use those, then a way we could be measuring that is through this process to, you know, send to the different committees, here are the things we've earmarked for you, and checking in, how's it going with those, you know, have they moved, where have you gone with them? So that is a way also of measuring by tracking them.
But then the question comes, if they don't do them. Yeah, I mean, there's not neither carrot nor stick in
I
this.
know.
I think there's both, but it's more subtle, right? So it's like a reminder, and if you haven't done it, there's a bit of like stick in the, oh, we didn't know we were, maybe we should work on that, right? And if you have done it, it's like, oh, we did that, good. You know, so I think the carrot and stick is there kind of inherently, and probably don't need to worry about it.
And if they don't, and
Volunteer
if they haven't had
perspective.
time to do it, then it becomes a question of, you know, what were the priorities, you know, what are the priorities?
Yeah.
And if there's an issue with bandwidth, then that, you know, it's become something that gets surfaced.
But I
That's
also
a
think it's
service,
if
really.
nothing's being done, okay, for example, natural resource inventory. That's been in there since 2012. Conservation Commission hasn't taken that up. Other towns, the volunteer boards have. You know, so then maybe that's something, if everybody feels strongly about, then we look for a grant to do that kind of work, because
Oh.
you can't be getting, you know. So it is good for staff to know what is and what isn't getting done. We tried not to have this long laundry list of actions, because realizing that it is on volunteers. But some of it, you know, is then, well, maybe we need to look for grant funding if it's a project. Sometimes it's just, these are things we're gonna do to keep this policy going, and.
Yeah.
some of them
I think it's good to know. I'm not scared of seeing a long list of things we haven't gotten to. And I hope that other people, you
are. I mean,
know,
the plan's good for 8 years, so
Yeah.
it's not meant to be.
And I think, we may encounter people when they see that list, and go, oh no, you know, what are you saying, we didn't get to all this stuff, and I hope we can help them get over that hump, because I think it's good to see a list of things that we haven't gotten to yet, because, you know, like I said earlier, it can help you with tracking those things, it can help you prioritizing your time, so it doesn't mean that you're not getting to enough stuff, but maybe you just get to the stuff in a different order than you've been doing. I think it's good, and it can help with saying, you know, we need more help with things. We don't have enough time, we don't have enough people, we don't have enough money, and then that's, like you said, that can be the way to look for grant funding. So I think it's good to have a list of things. And, you know, hopefully we can help folks feel comfortable with that.
And maybe it gets back to Tom's initial idea, I think back from January or February, of, you know, reaching out and seeing what our board's doing. Maybe that might be more time consuming on our part, so we can just start with a letter and the survey, and then always leave it at, hey, would you like one of us to come talk to you? That could be a question.
Yeah. But so in the conversation the select board's gonna have, is it acceptable to sort of say that many of the sustainability initiatives in the town are in the laps of the volunteer members of the town? I mean, that seems like a town-wide conversation. The town should actually weigh in on that. Like, are we comfortable with that?
Is that the conclusion that you've come to by the
Well,
whole thing and tallying it up, that most
tallying
is
it
in
all up,
volunteers?
that a lot of the big
Yeah.
things are volunteers. It's about, I mean, when you look down this list,
Mm-hmm.
almost the majority of
Yeah.
these people listed here are volunteer people.
Yeah, I think.
And then initials are all here.
I think that, in addition to some of the other points we brought up, like what is the town plan for, and maybe we need something else, would be very good to get to the select board before their meeting, so they can have a sense.
I mean, I also think it seems like a useful thing for the Energy Committee. I
Mhm.
mean, I get the feeling that the Energy Committee is arguing, in part, that a committee isn't sufficient when they're asking for a staff position. But I don't
It's
know that
it's
that's.
a working group, it's not the actual energy
But
committee.
aren't there 4 members? I mean, when we met with the Energy Committee.
Right, we had a joint meeting with them, but they're not the ones behind the proposal.
But didn't they?
There's some
didn't they vote
crossover.
to endorse the
They
proposal?
did vote to endorse it as well.
Yeah.
But Oscar and the working group
Is a different
is
thing.
different. Oscar happens to be on the energy committee too, but it's.
I think between the working group, the committee, and all the select board members, there may be only one person there who has read the whole plan. And that person feels like the plan takes care of all the sustainability issues. So I think it'd be very valuable as other planning experts to weigh in with us, with our opinion that it's not really geared to that comprehensively, like the conclusions you came up with.
Yeah, well, my.
Because so far, what
questions.
everyone's heard about the plan is that it's taking care of it in every way.
Yeah, well, it was that goaded me on to reading.
Right?
Page by page.
Yeah. So if you draft something and we review it, is that going to be an open meeting
Can we do
issue
that?
in between now and then? The 20th, select board meeting?
If you do, can we do something like that by email?
Or maybe only 2 of us will, in addition to Felicity, so it'll be 3 total.
What's our quorum for? So we can have up to 3 without it being a quorum?
Do you think you could have it done before the 14th and
Oh.
whatever
Oh, yeah, I
meeting?
can do
I
that.
mean,
Sure,
I know
sure,
you
sure.
might not be here, but I'd be much more comfortable having it being
Yeah.
discussed in
Yeah,
that setting. I don't,
yeah. Is that a warned meeting, the meeting
It
on the
will be a
14th?
warned.
Okay, sure,
And
yeah, I
will we
can
have-
totally have it done.
Well,
by then.
so 14th or another day.
or
depending on
wherever we
when
get that.
we can get
Yeah,
a
When we
quorum.
can get a quorum.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get it to you by the 12th, so when you send out the
Yep.
applicants for the proposals. you
Yeah, I can send that out as well.
I asked a question, this probably was a question for you, Felicity. When you were looking at things in the town plan, you were looking specifically for things related to sustainability. Did you get a sense of, if there are other areas outside of sustainability where there are a bunch of things where it wasn't clear, how those are to get addressed or how those are to be followed up on? And I'm sort of wondering if there's like more forest here.
Yeah,
outside
I mean,
the trees.
as I was going through it, I was realizing it was taking me a long time, so I started just paying attention to
Yeah.
anything that I could generally speak toward as being connected with sustainability, as it's been described in the public process. So I didn't really pay attention to the other things.
I'm just wondering if, if it's worth even considering a broader exercise of looking at the town plan for other things, that are maybe getting missed, whether just like a handoff could be made or something to get it on the radar of who really needs to be looking at it. But
It seems like this thing could be a much more, this is the town plan implementation matrix. It seems like it could be really more better used. I mean, at this point, it's just a table that has check marks in it, and you don't really know what the check marks mean. So, and then it says things like long, short, ongoing, that I think you could do a lot better with that. But it's a lot to do.
It's a great job for our new technical person to make them familiar with the town plan.
Yeah.
Read through it from an
Right, read through it
agricultural
and-
point of view,
and-
historic and cultural properties point of view, and then her.
And turn it into a Gantt chart.
I guess
Go-
there was
go
something
easy,
you said,
right?
and I'm not
Let's go.
gonna necessarily get it right. I think that whatever you do, you should qualify that this is the town plan. I mean, the town is, there's other things that aren't in here that the town,
That the
is
town
doing.
is working on
Like
doing.
when
Yeah,
Public
yeah.
Works can purchase an electric vehicle or a hybrid, they do. It doesn't always work out that they can because of, weight, not having they don't make it in the vehicle. So it's not, this shouldn't be the be-all, end-all of what the town is doing. It was not meant to be, right? So.
Right, no, I'm getting that message, but I think that message has been a little unclear in the public conversation around the value of the plan vis-à-vis the sustainability board. And all I was thinking is that the commission should sort of clarify that, since this is something that we have purview over. Okay, cool, I'll write the letter, draft the letter. And, that's all. So,
That's all she wrote.
yeah, we did call back up the agenda.
It's potential land use regulation.
Yeah, here we are.
This is right.
There's a handout. Take it away, Sue.
Does anybody, I did put this on the Google Drive, but I also have handouts. I gave one.
It's under the land use regulation amendment?
Yeah. And so some of these are ones that, two of them came from Brian, 1 and 2. So Tom, as I kind of mentioned, Brian is kind of constantly feeding stuff he thinks needs to be amended based on the DRB's experience or his own.
Yeah, great example of it.
So the lot coverage in the industrial district, so we currently allow a 60% lot coverage. And if you're thinking about a 3-acre parcel, which is the minimum lot size in that zoning district, if you're creating a new parcel, then 60% is a pretty big, lot, allows a lot of lot coverage. But there are there's several non-conforming lots, some of which are less than an acre, and similar to what we found in the service center, 60% lot coverage can be difficult. And so the discussion here is, do we want to increase it? The way we handled it when we discussed the service center is we wanted to keep it at a 60% lot coverage, but we were allowing up to 70% as long as 60% was the effective lot coverage. So that means if you're going over the 60%, you're gonna have to manage that extra 10% on site. You can't be sending 70% off site. You at least have to, 10% is gonna have to be treated on site. I mean, we encourage that anyway, but really in that situation, you're gonna have to prove how you're treating 10% on site.
Treating?
Stormwater treatment, so it's not running off into the.
So that you have like a rain garden or something like that.
Yep, rain, there's several techniques.
So is that the major impetus for having green space? Or for having partial coverage? Or is it aesthetics, or?
It's both. I mean, we increased for both reasons. To improve the quality of development, the aesthetic part, to allow for street trees and better landscaping, but also the regulations do acknowledge that these areas can be used to treat stormwater too, and should be. They should be integrated. They should be both.
So-
Landscaping and stormwater.
Is there a mandate for stormwater, or it's just suggested? Like if the land is like sloped like that, but it's grass, it's not gonna infiltrate much,
Right. We have regulations that prohibit too much development on steep slopes. So.
But given our difficulty with stormwater, Are we okay with the notion of increasing this?
Is the suggestion to increase it to 70% period, or increase it the way we did for the service center?
Well, I'd be fine with an increased period, but we could do it the way of the service center. I mean, it is the industrial zoning district. We're acknowledging that these are heavier
Right.
um,
Yeah, and.
land uses.
And looking at them.
Sometimes
one's-
there's difficulty with infiltration in industrial areas because there's contamination.
Some people we don't. Yeah, at least in the ones up by Ferry Road, from the Rotary to Ferry Road, that industrial area. Whereas I assume Exit 1 Industrial Park might be kind of a newer one.
Yep.
So that one looks like it has more green space, but the one, the first one I said, some of those lots are like 100%.
Yep.
Maybe it's not gonna affect them because they're already built, so this
I
would
know,
be.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, we only have a certain amount of industrial zoning.
We do. And I mean, it's
It's
always
not-
a challenge when we
yeah.
find an industrial use and we're trying to find a parcel that they can go
Yeah.
to. We don't have a lot of developable industrial land.
Right,
in the
and so
industrial.
in that line of thought, I'd say maybe make it 100%.
Oh,
In the industrial zone, we can always shrink the industrial zone. But I
I
mean,
don't
it
think
seems odd to like zone something industrial and
I-
then say you can't use all of it.
you can use it, you just have to deal with your
You
stormwater.
just have to have a creative, I mean, there are plenty of creative design solutions that you can use to have pervious surfaces and also usable industrial space. You just have to be creative. They're just requiring that you, we are just requiring that you be cognizant of the environment, which I think we should always be.
Yeah.
It's kind of
But,
like more important in the industrial spaces that they're dealing with.
Yeah, I
Treating
think
the
that way
stormwater
too.
on their site, you
Yeah.
know, it's like, just because of the nature of the work often, so.
I mean, you know, any lot, any larger lot is gonna need a state stormwater permit, and there's no way they would allow it to be impervious anyway. It couldn't be 100% impervious and meet their.
Is there a state standard that, are we being more stringent than what a state requirement would be?
There is not a state standard.
So does an impervious parking lot count towards the coverage or not?
Yes. Does
Impervious, yes.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Mhm.
I mean, right here in the industrial, anyway, I'm getting maybe a separate topic, but. I mean, well,
even-
the industrial zone goes right along the river. You know where the boat ramp is?
Mhm.
That's zoned industrial.
Yeah, but even those lots, like CNS,
Yeah.
they have to manage their stormwater. They have big detention ponds. They've been whacked by the state with fines and stuff because
Yeah.
they weren't doing what they were supposed to. I mean.
No,
I
I'm saying,
can't
I think they should, but.
I
don't
can't
know.
think of a site,
Whole
even in
30%.
an existing
Sort of.
industrial site that is 100%
Mhm.
impervious.
Have we had industrial people who have wanted, who have said, oh, 60% I can't manage? Or is
That I
Brian just
don't know.
imagining that they
I-
might come?
I don't know that for sure. I don't know if he's had conversations and it was 60 and they were like, I mean, we definitely did at the service center. We've had lots of conversations in that service center, particularly with the Friendlies and some of the fast foods, McDonald's when they redeveloped. And we've had those conversations, but.
So even if you have a 3-acre lot, this new change would mean that you could take 70% of it.
Mhm. And that's gonna be your building, your parking lots.
And so the argument here is that we allowed an increase already in the service center from 60% to 70%.
We're proposing.
So long as the effective coverage remained at 60%.
Mhm.
So the recommendation is that we increase the lot coverage in the industrial zone to 70%. I'm assuming with the same caveat that so long as
That was my question.
the effective coverage remains at 60%.
If that's the way you want it to be, yeah, we can do that way.
What does that mean again?
It means-
Effective.
It says it in the top, portions of the
Right, I
lot
see.
covered by pervious paving are
Oh.
included in lot coverage unless the DRB finds that it closely resembles and primarily functions as green space. So that difference between 60% and 70% could be that 10% is pervious pavement.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I had the same thought. I think the only flag someone raised is that in some of these lots, is that actually a bad thing if there's pervious pavers and stormwater's coming and draining, into what may be contaminated soil that might be close to the edge of the lot boundary, and then it's maybe like pushing that contamination over the edge? I'm just sort of
Yeah, I don't
speculating.
know.
I don't know how much a concern that
Well,
is.
there's probably other, I mean, prevention would be good, but maybe there's other laws that would make that illegal. And I mean, and they should have that dealt with.
Well, if they had
If it's
offsite,
not.
if they were causing offsite contamination, then there are ways you could, that, property owners could pursue that.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
should we be allowing them to meet, I'm just thinking about it, but should we be allowing them to meet the coverage requirements with something other than permeable paving? It seems like we're prescribing, permeable paving, but I think there are other ways to do that, like you mentioned earlier, some of them have put tanks underneath to
Mhm.
catch the water.
Yeah,
Deal with
infiltration
it that way,
systems
yeah.
underneath a parking lot.
I
The
can't
pervious,
remember how-
that's just a way, that's just a,
So that's
it's
that's
an
the
example, it's
speech
not,
word,
that
okay.
wouldn't be.
Because the language where it was like it primarily functions as green space, it seemed a little prescribed to me, but maybe I'm splitting hairs, I'm not sure. So,
So do we want to add the phrase, just so long as,
so
et cetera?
I think,
I would be more comfortable moving it from 60 to
I'd be more
70% if that phrase
comfortable,
is
yeah.
included.
I still kind of want to know like why this came up.
Yeah, like,
Was it-
I think I lean more towards being inclined to not increase it unless, that you can, like, provide a real example for like what the obstacle is and I'm not seeing that here, so maybe we push it back to Brian to say like,
I would
give us
like to,
examples of like
yeah.
what the actual problem is. And then if we do increase it, I think I would want that caveat. If from my point of view, I think we want to constantly innovate, right? You constantly want to be like increasing your ability to make the better choice. And so I'm not particularly supportive of kind of backsliding unless there's a pretty extreme, unless it's unattainable somehow, which I don't think that it's unattainable, right? I think that if you're redeveloping a site, you need to consider it, and there's 100 ways you can do that. Or if there's some other, economic reason or something that, you gotta convince me.
Okay.
Is it possible to go to the DRB and argue for an exception on a case-by-case basis?
You can ask for a waiver, you can get up to 5%?
5% or
Or
2,000 square feet.
more.
Oh, right, sorry, I should have read that.
So it's not. So
And
you
so-
can increase it.
Okay, so Tom, how do you
Hmm.
feel about this? Because
Um,
I'm feeling
yeah.
like the movement is going towards kicking it back to Brian.
Right. Well, I like that idea to get more info and examples. I guess, well, like, what's the terminology? Prescriptive versus formative or something? Zoning. I'd like it if it were performance-based. I mean, I'd like it to say, capture all your stormwater on site. But as far as saying 60 or 40%, grass or tree cover is like the only real way to do it. I don't think. I mean, I think this kind of leads to spreading out industrial areas, and I'd like to see them, more business, more that's packed in to the zones that we have
Huh.
as possible.
The other thing is,
That's interesting.
I wonder if it's he says many of the existing lots in the industrial zoning district are much smaller than the 3-acre minimum. So is there a question of the size lot, and is there an exception, or there's a modification based on a smaller size lot as opposed to a larger size lot where there's some boundary there in terms of
That's what I was
There's
thinking.
an
that if-
allowable
if it's-
waiver,
If you've got
right,
a 1
because-
hour, a 1 acre lot,
Right,
you
and you're
go
trying
to
to work on it.
70%.
Mhm.
But if you've got 3, then 60 should do.
Something like that. I mean, so maybe that's a question.
That's something we can look at,
Okay.
the number of lots. I mean, the minimum lot size, I can't recall what it used to be in the industrial zoning district, but when we amended the land use regulations in 2015, what we were trying to do was, because we always had a difficult time when we'd get somebody that was in looking for a larger piece of land to develop. So we were trying to assemble areas of town where there were larger lots and would have the more intensive industrial uses, such as Commonwealth Dairy, that has lots of traffic and coming and going, and they're really cramped on their site, but that was kind of the best they could find at the time that worked for them. So trying to really keep the spread of what we were seeing of commercial uses into the industrial zoning districts. So there was like the VA went into Exit 1 Industrial Park. Things like up on Putney Road, there were a couple of credit unions and stuff in the industrial zoning district. So we were trying to say, hey, we have very limited industrial lands, let's just like keep these areas for industrial and let's open up the other areas for retail and make it easier for the retail in the service center and the mixed use, or not the mixed use, sorry, the neighborhood centers and the downtown. So we were trying to segregate the heavier truck traffic, logistic type businesses that we have in town to the industrial zoning districts. So I think it would be interesting to pull up and try to figure out what our lot sizes are. And, you know, in zoning, we don't like to create too many non-conforming lots. Usually that says there's a something off with where you set the threshold of the minimum lot size. So we can look at that, we can map that. I'm sure we did at the time, but I would have to try to find that data, or it's just easier to redo it on GIS.
Okay, so kicking number 1 home back.
Can I just bring up an idea while we're on industrial?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the industrial zone borders the Connecticut River.
It does.
And in some of the case by the Ferry Road boat ramp, it's not even a current industrial use. It's just
Right.
forest. There's
Yeah.
3 lots there, so maybe we could make that not industrial. Rezone it, so that way industry is not possible there, bordering
That's
the
like a
river.
New England, Middle Town sort of legacy where, people built industry on moving water bodies in order to power things and get goods in and out easily, and then they dumped stuff on the site.
Yeah, right, yeah, there's a history
And
there.
So is
a lot
are
of
those
it's
brownfield
pretty,
sites?
No, not the ones he's looking at.
I'm not sure about the ones he's
I'm
specifically
familiar
looking
with
at,
the
but
ones
there are
he's
some that
looking
are
at.
pretty contaminated, whether they're on a brownfield list or not. I know they've come up.
Are they in
Some
the-
of that property actually has been, we've had some inquiries, at least on one of the properties, and had to do with non-industrial type uses. Could you do this? Could you do that? So I know what you're talking about, and I'm happy to bring it back and look at it. What I would say is access to those properties is through Old Ferry Road, or maybe through where Long Fall Paper is. I'm not exactly sure where the access would be. Those are some of the heavier industrial uses in town. You're near Allard Lumber, you're near the, not that it's heavy industrial now, but near the, working paper plant, or paperboard plant.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just
So,
upstream of
what
it.
are the odors, what are the noise, those kind of things might impact whether or not they're really suitable for
Different kind of zoning.
a different zone.
Mm.
So we can certainly look at them.
Mhm.
Didn't we have, I can't remember if it was an overlay, if it was actually a zoning district where we had like recreation and,
Yep, we have a zoning district.
it's a zoning
Waterfront.
district, right? So would it make sense to put those in that zoning district instead?
It may, again, it's we tried to go industrial with industrial, and you're kind of carving out something in the middle of it, and what are the impacts of the industrial on those maybe there's not much of an impact, but.
If we had the natural resources inventory, then we could look at that and see whether or not we needed more riverine wetlands, I don't know, open property, and then we could rezone them and add to our inventory.
Yeah, there's also a question of like which of the, like there's a layer, not in our zoning, but there are like prime farmland
Yeah.
areas,
Oh, this has to
right?
be one.
And
This must be.
It's
'cause-
probably not prime, it could be statewide.
Oh, well, yeah.
But some sort of importance.
Connecticut River floodplain, right?
yeah, so I don't know if there's a consideration there.
Huh,
We
interesting.
can look at them, look at another meeting, but.
Sure.
It's a whole other ball. of
Yeah, because
wax.
it's another town, but bordering is right, is Dummerston, that farm property, Kathy. And that's, I mean, that has one or two houses and fields, and it just seems like these three parcels, well, one's a state boat ramp, but, you know, the other two are a natural kind of extension of that in theme and, you know, potential use. I bet someone would love, if they could, if it's the right size or possible, I bet people would love to put a house or two there, or leave
And
it
it's
as a farm.
actually not possible right now.
Oh, really?
It
Oh,
isn't.
because in industry it's not
Because it's
possible.
industrial.
Oh,
you
yeah.
didn't have a.
Yeah,
You could have a caretaker's home, so if there was a non-residential use going on.
If there was a rec center there.
Yes,
maybe the
because you
state
can
will
have,
pay
I
for it
think,
at their boat
athletic
ramp.
facilities.
That'd be great.
All right, shall we move on to number 2?
Now that I'm looking at the map, I'm like, oh, that's Connecticut River Drive, is that industrial?
No,
So it's residential along the river.
it's waterfront, I think. It's either rural residential or
Which stretch?
It's like,
further south, just south of the roundabout.
there's this
Oh,
road
yeah.
that
South of
goes
Route
off
9.
Route 9 up the river.
Yeah, it's green.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
All right, you guys, energy.
Sorry.
So this is just a suggestion. Our site plan review doesn't take into account energy considerations, but our conditional use does. And so we could add that as a criteria that's looked at during site plan review. It's, seems to be important to the town. It could, you know, affect things as the building orientation, the landscaping, and it just
Bless you.
would be, thank you, just another criteria that the DRB could be looking at when they're performing site plan review.
Can I ask, like, how we make these changes? So, like, we've got our zoning, right? Can we make, do we add up all these changes and then we make a big change? Zoning
Yeah.
2.1 or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, we don't just stick these in, like, okay.
No, I mean, we're gonna have hearings and then the select board
There's
will have
Yeah, and
hearings
then,
again.
okay. I know we went through that once so far.
Yeah, but actually, we haven't. We
did one.
We lined up a bunch.
I thought we did one too, but.
But we didn't change anything?
You guys may have done it with an old energy source.
No, I thought we did one.
I thought we did one
one
after the land
After
use
the
reg.
DRB started working with it.
No.
Change.
We never enacted them. We
Okay,
never,
so
we
they're
never took
still-
them through the hearing. Those are still,
Sitting and waiting. Okay.
Those are the
with
ones
these, okay.
we've already done as a
Yeah.
group, we're still waiting for the final
Yeah.
thing. Well, does anybody have any conversation on this one? This one seems pretty straightforward to me.
I think.
Yeah, I think that's, and the site plan review is done by
the development review board.
the DRB. So like someone approaches them with the development and then they review this.
There are a
And so
couple.
it's just making the DRB consider this in their site plan review.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are some that are minor site plan review that Brian can do administratively, but those are pretty small additions.
Are a lot of the criteria in site plan review written in this sort of way? Like,
Yes.
without numbers?
Yes.
Okay, so it's like talking points and ideas? Okay.
Yeah. It shows up in
And
there.
we encourage you.
And is there a lighting, for this energy conservation, is there, oh, you say like, it's the
There are
light
lighting.
fixtures, high efficiency light fixtures.
And there's really detailed specific standards for lighting as well.
Okay, which I remember. What's CUP mean at the end?
Oh, conditional use permit.
To me, this seems fine to add
So
this to our
the way it
docket
shows up in the
things.
document is
Oh, yeah.
there's this whole list of criteria, and site plan only has a couple of them, so it would just be another check in the box.
So it would add in like another.
Well, energy's on there, it just, look at the conditional use,
Oh,
it's like number 11 or something.
Oh, I see, so you just get a check mark there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
that, so that means that even the permitted uses of a zone need to be reviewed in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good with that one? Onward.
Livestock, so different animals, people like to have it as pets, and there was a recent DRB
Jesus.
appeal, so people had pigs as pets and they lived in the house, they also spend time outside. They said they were pets, so originally they were considered to be kind of domesticated pets. But as there were concerns, there were complaints from neighbors about odor and noise and the kind of things that you get from non-traditional pets maybe. And so at that point, the way that we took care of it was to basically say, you know, there's some nuisance issues going on, you need to go before the development review board. And, you know, we don't think that these are pets anymore. And there is a provision in the zoning regulations that allow you to get a conditional use approval if you've got livestock or different, what's the term? Anyway, we had no definition of livestock. So the whole thing centered on are pigs livestock, are pigs not livestock? Anyway, the DRB upheld that the people could keep their pigs. But staff remains concerned that there can still be noise and odor issues with, you know, any non-domesticated pet, you know, outside of cats and dogs and birds and whatever, the traditional pets. So we came across the definition of livestock in state statute that we would like to add so that if somebody comes and wants a RIA, which has happened in the past, they get conditional use review. If somebody wants to have a pig, and you know, it's great if they live in the house, but they're also going to be outside and have, you know, so we'd like conditional use approval. We think it's the most fair because neighbors will get a chance to come and express their concerns or express their support, and we can solve issues.
So I would make a suggestion, change horses to equine, so that you don't get donkeys and zebras, which have come up in other towns.
And ponies.
So I would say equine, so that would cover the
And-
whole family.
And just out of curiosity, what is cervidae,
We are,
camelids?
they are
Yeah.
deciduous antler.
Cervidae.
So elk, moose,
Okay, okay.
deer, and then
Ratite. Ratites are the big birds.
Flightless
Rabbits are
birds.
the ostriches and.
Oh,
and
okay.
ryu.
And the camelids is like
Camelids
your.
are camels and alpacas.
The glossary sections have the expanded.
I had the same question.
Yeah, yeah, and I would
I
agree
know.
with Kate, like, we
Yeah.
should say.
My only
equine.
thing with changing it to horses,
Changing it from horses to equines.
yeah, is that is the definition out of the statute. And so if we're changing, it's
So
not a
we're gonna
direct.
say, what about my donkey?
Well, we'll just
Can
get
you
rid of
say
the
a thing at
as,
the end?
we'll get rid of the as defined, and we'll just say cattle.
Well, I
Listen,
don't,
I'm
not trying to be like too much pain in the butt, I just, you know.
No, you're right, well, it's the same thing.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Someone else might.
I think you're right. I mean, it's also a potential loophole that would be a.
And then the other question I had is I was trying to understand, it says conditional use review of pigs would be required.
Mhm.
Why just pigs? Could we just say
Oh.
conditional?
I'm
Yeah,
just
conditional
following
use
it up
of-
as
of-
this is the trigger
Yeah.
that we had, but no, I
And
mean,
so-
it would be any of these.
So any of
prior
these I could
conditions.
apply for conditional use. So the thing I was thinking of earlier was if I have a miniature horse, I don't want to scare anybody. He lives in my neighborhood, because that'd be crazy. But if I had a miniature horse, they can be under 30 inches at the shoulder, so they can be quite small. People house train them. This came up in Springfield, Vermont, right as I was moving away, and I don't know how it got resolved, but someone had a miniature horse on, I think it was like Summer Street or South Street, which is a pretty downtown street, and wanted to be able keep it as a pet. So it sounds like if somebody were in that situation, they had a miniature horse or anything on this list, they could apply
Yeah.
for conditional
And-
use. It gives the neighbors an opportunity to chime in like how they feel
Yeah,
about
and really that was always
horse.
here, it was under other livestock and wild animals, and it's
Mhm.
saying you could go for conditional use. The problem is we
We
didn't have a
didn't
definition of
define.
livestock, and so when people said these are pets, not livestock, there is, there are plenty of pigs as pets,
Mhm.
that's totally valid. And so the initial thing was, okay, it's a pet, you don't need a permit, but then when you start getting complaints, then
So-
it's like, well,
so-
so I just want to
Yeah.
prevent that from happening in the future. I think it's better process. It's not a typical pet.
Is
Might be an
there
acceptable
any
pet.
argument
Yeah.
for defining what is a list of pets, so it's a white list, not a black list? Do you know what I'm saying when I say that?
Yeah,
Be
but I
open-minded instead
don't
of
know
restrictive.
what that would have,
I'm just wondering, is there any state statute that defines these are the things that are pets that are
No.
fine? Because that almost seems
Don't believe
easier,
so.
if just to define these are pets, anything not on this list, you have to get a conditional review. I don't know.
Oh, that's an interesting
if it
approach.
was, I mean, I think I've seen dogs, cats, and ferrets.
Or, it could become a long list, snakes,
Could be,
lizards,
yeah, snakes and
birds.
birds and rats. and
rabbits
Guinea
fit
pigs
this.
and rabbits.
Yeah, rabbits.
Well, they don't fall under this
They'd be
livestock, so
agricultural.
rabbits would be
Pets,
a pet.
you can have 25 of them.
Breeding them for meat.
Yeah, and chickens aren't on here.
Chickens are already, you need a permit, if you're gonna have chicken,
Yeah,
and
we
there's
have a
some,
specific thing
there's
about
some specific
chickens.
things about where the.
And I think the state did too, like they had a specific interest in chickens. I remember right.
I'm curious how the conditional use review goes, like if a neighbor complains without, it's all subjective, right? But I'll just say, if a neighbor complains without basis, how is that followed up? Who overrules who?
Neighbor
Or
complains without basis.
yeah, I mean,
Well,
if there's 5 neighbors who support this pig and 4 who don't, does it go through, or if does one loud
No, because the
person
neighbors don't
complain?
vote, I mean, it would be the DRB.
Yeah, no, the DRB is strictly looking at
They take-
the evidence they
yeah.
have. I mean, no, they'll take evidence from the
Right.
butters, they don't,
Oh, yeah,
what
so
weight
there's-
they wanna give it
I
is up to them.
Okay. I'd almost like to, this isn't like an idea for action or anything, it's something to think about. I'd almost like to not see, if we're going to give all these sorts of animals sort of, for lack of a better phrase, guilty until proven innocent, I'd almost like to see that for dogs too. Or not for pigs, because dogs that are pets often are just barking incessantly. In close neighborhoods.
It's true, but you can, but.
And
but
from my
this is-
bedroom window, I can
Right,
hear
right.
other my close neighbors complaining about how the dogs are always barking
Yeah,
from
but
another
that,
neighbor.
but that's a nuisance. That's a
Yeah, I think
sort of-
that's a
a
nuisance
nuisance
thing.
thing. This is a real regulation that, you know. you
Mhm.
kind of
So is it an advantage to
following.
having it tied to the Vermont state?
But I can't
thing?
imagine pigs making
Is-
noises like that.
What's the advantage of
Well, it
tying
was
it?
just-
I don't want to
we-
propose tweaking it if there's.
No, I mean,
Just
it was just, we were able to find one that, or I was able to
Mhm.
find one that was clear that in this situations, pigs should have been treated as livestock in the very beginning, and then it kind of, just, we didn't have a definition of livestock, it kind of worked, and it seemed
Okay.
reasonable covering what we've seen Rhea, they came for a conditional use approval.
Yeah, I think one of the things that needs to be done, probably not now, is the notion of numbers, right? Or the notion of care, but that seems to me to be a civility issue.
So
that
if somebody
Yeah.
has like 50 dogs.
50 dogs, or, if you have one pig who lives in your house and sometimes goes and does something out in the yard, that's probably not a problem.
Mhm.
But if you have 10 pigs that go in and out of the house, that becomes a problem. But anyway, I think we should move on to housing density. Are we all in agreement that this seems acceptable? Do we want to change horses to
I
equine?
think it's
or-
acceptable the way it is.
I'm okay to put it to equine, I think that makes
Okay.
sense, like if it covers the donkeys and other things.
And I think it's acceptable, and I can think of lots of, like, here's some way somebody could worm in around this, and maybe they'll come up and maybe they won't, but we'll address them when they do, so, good.
All right, on to housing density.
Okay, so we had talked in late December, I've been concerned that we have too many controls on, in certain zoning districts. So we have bulk and we have density regulation. So bulk is controlling the size of the building and the height of the building. And then the density is controlling the number of units. And it seems, to me, it seems really tight. And so I had been looking at, first it was maybe we should raise the density. But the more research I did, it seems like the suggestion is to just control the bulk and get rid of the density. You maybe want to put a cap on it, like maybe 12 units per building or something like that, but there's not a need to have both tight controls on the bulk and the density. You kind of let the market figure it out. And there's other controls, so like parking. Lots of the Congress for New Urbanism says get rid of parking altogether. Well, we know that doesn't work in Brattleboro. They're not ready to go to on-street parking in the winter. So we do need to provide parking on site, and we want to make sure that there's enough parking on the site so that it doesn't become a neighborhood problem or they're parking all over the place. So my suggestion, actually, after doing some reading, is that we actually get rid of the density in our more developed parts of town. So that would be the urban center. We had no residential density in the urban center, but we did have floor area ratio for non-residential or for mixed use. So we use that as a density control. We allow 5-story buildings. We allow.
That's the max?
That's the max, is 5 stories. I think you can get up to 1 story more with a waiver.
And that's
if
due-
the
and
fire
that's due to
department.
Mm.
Yeah, it's due to what they can handle.
Yeah, okay.
We don't allow residential on the first floor in the urban center. That doesn't change. So, if you want to build micro apartments or you want to have 4.
And there's state building codes that
There's building
that
codes like
dictate
safety.
minimums
Yeah,
that are
so that's-
habitable and safe, so it's like, that takes
Exactly.
care of that.
In the village center, I think right now we've got, you can have 12 dwelling units per acre. But in the village center and in the neighborhood center and in the mixed use neighborhoods, most of the lots are way under 1 acre. So if you have, approximately a 12,000, but you get 6 units, and then you're forced into a footprint as well. I think that we want to just let the market respond. I think it opens up, and we know we need housing in this community. I think it could be a positive thing, and it's kind of it's a big step, but it's kind of a small step because we also have all these other controls. I think it's the first step.
So it just removes.
Yeah, it removes that. It's kind of a concept from the form-based code, if you've ever heard of form-based code, because you're still controlling the form and the bulk of it.
So I have a few, I'm sort of mulling it, I have a few thoughts about it without really drawing a conclusion. I think where you'll probably run into pushback will be in the residential neighborhood, which is a pretty significant chunk of what I consider downtown. And is a lot of older buildings. And there are issues with, if you're trying to cram a lot of people into older Victorian buildings, it's not safe. They burn really easily. There are other ways we can address that, but I have some concern about that. I definitely think that we have a housing problem in our posters in the first place. Rents are I watch them all the time. I don't have to worry about them. I own a home, but I watch all the time just to see, what they are. They're just, but Yeah, I mean, I think where we'll get pushback is maybe that area, because I think people have concerns like that. I think people also have concerns about parking. You know, already, I think we had people come in before at
We
one
have.
point and express concerns about, you know, the buildings on my street are having more and more units, and now I no longer have anywhere to park. So I think, I'm cautioning, I think that's where pushback will be if people are paying attention.
So my response on the first part is that that's where the life safety codes are gonna come into effect, as to, you know, there's requirements for firewalls and for sprinklers and that kind of stuff that I think is going to control a bit of packing too many in. And then I was just trying to pull up the parking, so I still think it's important that they meet our parking standards, and so we have 1 space per dwelling unit.
Yeah.
And in my mind, that has to be accounted for. Your parking lot is part of your lot coverage, so if you have a 70% lot coverage, you know, you're gonna have to fit those parking spaces there. Previously, where we've had a lot of problems, that wasn't always the case, or it wasn't clear, and therefore the DRB would allow 7 units when they really only had 4 parking spaces, and then people are parking on the lawn in the winter because they can't have the street parking. I don't disagree. I mean, I think that could be where the pushback is.
I think, and the other thing I think you may run into, which is more of a long-term thought, is if we're pushing, if we're removing some of the things that do allow people to push to put more units into traditionally older neighborhoods, then you will be, you will be faced with the possibility that tearing down some of those buildings is an easier way to meet the requirements versus retrofitting those buildings. I mean, I can speak personally as someone who's got an old Victorian home and it's a single family home. I mean, I have no idea how I would make that, like, you know, okay to be apartments, because they're not, they're tinder boxes. So if you, and this is a little bit personal too, I like old homes. I also like housing people. Housing people in old Victorian homes doesn't really work. So I think they're just going to push back, you know, maybe in that area too. It's like then you're going to be encouraged to tear down what I think are really beautiful Victorian homes that give Brattleboro a lot of its character, because, you know, people might run into, like, it's not economically sustainable for me as a landlord, right? You know, to make this home safe and also have the number of units I need to make it viable. So I'm proposing that I'm going to pull it down and build something new that meets what your requirements are for viability. It has the right number of units for me to make my living as a landlord, but you're losing a Victorian, you know, historic home that, you know, maybe had some architectural and aesthetic value and historical value. So that's another, like, just a thing that's in my mind. But
It's interesting because the state, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development is doing a big housing study. I kind of write about it in the little memo. And they're supposed to have tools out in 2020. Did you?
What page is that?
Not the
Right
memo.
here.
Oh, sorry, not the memo, the parking thing?
Oh, the parking is 3-37.
Okay.
Yeah, so this zoning for great neighborhoods project that they're doing. So, you know, if we're not comfortable making, this is a big change, I said it's small, but kind of big. You know, we can kind of wait and see what they come up with for Vermont, and look at some of those tools then and decide as kind of a bigger housing. I think, I hear what you're saying about the neighborhoods. I think that there's potential that maybe there's some neighborhoods that would be better served by loosening up the density, and others maybe not. So there might be the creation of a new zoning district.
Well, and that also seems like a conversation for that committee that needs to get, once we get certified local government,
Yeah,
to have the conversation around, well, what are we gonna?
what do we want to
make-
preserve?
Yeah, what do we want to preserve and how do we decide? Because ultimately, any town is gonna have to lose some of its historic fabric as time goes by.
This is true.
But the key would be to to preserve the ones like this one that wasn't,
Yeah.
that we really would be sad to lose.
Regarding parking, is there like something like the Brooks House, which doesn't have parking? Where is like an exemption for that written, or is it just?
Brooks House
case by
actually
case?
does, half of the Harmony lot where they have the
Oh.
covered carports is
It's
actually,
all theirs.
it's their property.
So well,
And it was always,
Yeah.
they always had parking there, I think they leased it to the town, or it just,
so does every building
I
comply?
think-
And that comes up for, all the downtown ones that are commercial on the first floor? With resident
no.
apartments on
Most downtown buildings
They don't
don't
need
have
to.
parking. They don't need to, because there's the transportation center,
the. Okay,
so.
that's written in here
They're-
somewhere,
in the-
or?
Yeah, the urban center.
Yeah, the urban center,
Oh,
you,
okay. I figured, I just hadn't noticed
you cannot
it.
create new surface parking. You could, if there was a new building being built, you could have underground parking, something like that, but you can't create new surface parking.
I would
Right.
I don't want to like make more work, but I'll look at this great neighborhoods thing, and I am kind of interested what other towns do with this, like Burlington and, any towns that have experienced a lot of need for growth and housing, and how they've balanced these things.
I don't think anybody's figured that out yet, but
But what you're
asking
suggesting,
around.
if I understand you correctly, is in fact, this isn't really gonna change anything because we've just sort of overregulated that.
I feel like we have overregulated.
Somebody's gonna use this to get around and put in more units than we think is feasible.
I'm comfortable that they wouldn't, because we still have lots of other, we still have setbacks, we still have lot coverage, we still have building footprint, we still have building height. So, maybe you can only build a 4,000 square foot building. If somebody wants to use that to create 4 or 5 executive apartments in there, okay. If somebody wants to use it to create 10 more affordable units, like, that's fine. I mean, whatever they think the market can handle.
Okay. But if they were to make 10 units, they'd have to have 10 parking spots.
Right, and that
That
is
would
still
make
part
it-
of their lot coverage, and if you're only
And
allowed,
you only have 60%, then you're gonna be parking.
so maybe you're gonna
everywhere else.
have 10 smaller units. If that's what you want, or instead you can have 6, of which they're all a little bit bigger.
Right, okay.
Because you're still working within the footprint of 4,000 square feet, or 6,000, or whatever it is for these.
We also have a different height restriction in the residential.
Um,
I'm just trying to remember. It's not the 5 or 6. It's
3 stories max.
So do we want to kick this back to you to do more thinking on it, or are we okay?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it
I
too.
mean, it's not moving anywhere yet.
And
I
then
can
we'll have
put
public
more-
hearings on it too, and
Right,
get more
so we
feedback,
can-
so I think it's,
Yeah, I'm okay with putting it out for public hearing with the other things. Like I said, I think you'll get the pushback on the things I mentioned, but, so, maybe having an understanding of how we would answer those questions.
So just to summarize, we kicked back number
Kicked back
one,
Number 1.
because
we
we're
wanted-
accepting
We wanted examples.
energy, livestock, and housing density. Super, good work.
I think that is pretty much, I need to go through my list. I think that might be it. This was the big piece that I had to bring back, the density.
So then we're ready to go to the select board with our collected amendments?
No, first, I'll put them all, get them all together, and we have to have a public hearing.
And then we go to the select board.
And then we bring them to the select board, and they have 2 public hearings. So it's still a process.
So, anything else?
I think we're done, right?
Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Right.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Tom, I think you seconded.